Today's conversation on managing emotions during turbulent times. My name is Eva Churchill, and I am your presenter today, so welcome. Let's get started. So before I get into the meat of today's conversation at all, I want to be super clear that this presentation does not provide medical advice. Everything that we're talking about today is for informational purposes only. It's not meant as advice or diagnosis or treatment of any kind. You know, I am a psychotherapist and executive coach in private practice in New York City, but I am talking in general, and I want you to always seek the advice of your physician and other qualified healthcare providers. Okay, so let's move forward here. So as I said at the beginning, my name is Eva Churchill, and I am a therapist and a coach in New York City, and let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about some of the emotional impact of the turbulent times that we're in, and I'm going to try more than anything at all to make this conversation useful to you, right? I've got this lovely PowerPoint here, but I talk to enough people on a daily and weekly basis that I hear what people are struggling with. I hear what's hard. I hear what's difficult. And I would like today to be really useful to you. And so we're going to talk about different ways to do that, how to manage some of the common feelings that people are having in stress and anxiety and worry and overwhelm and burnout and all of that good stuff. So let's get started. So yeah, if the world has ever felt more out of control, I certainly can't remember a time when it did. We have the pandemic going on. We've got social unrest. We've got economic uncertainty, the upcoming election. We've got, the West Coast of the United States on fire. We've got hurricanes. We've got, you name it, we've got it. People are at the edges of themselves. I see it every single day. I talk to people who, are in good marriages, and their marriages are really struggling terribly because people are frustrated, they're isolated, they're bored, they're lonely, they're scared, and we sort of take it out on the people that we're living with. People are really at the edges of themselves, and so that is the backdrop for today's conversation, obviously. And there is a huge range of emotional responses to the level of overwhelm and things that are going on in the world. People are feeling shocked, confused, anxious, fearful, angry, denial. So pretty much it's true that any emotional response that you have could be seen as normal. I also talk to plenty of people who just aren't feeling much. They're feeling really numb. They're feeling kind of lost. They're feeling kind of out of it. They just feel overwhelmed. And so anything could feel like a normal response. There's a huge spectrum of feeling that is within the normal range, and anything on that feelingful spectrum counts to me, right? Anything counts. And so sometimes it's helpful to take a little bit of an inventory. Like, think about where your fears are right now, maybe about the pandemic in particular. Does it hit really close to home? Has anybody in your family been sick? Has anyone in your family died? Are you really frightened? Or have you been extremely cautious because you have someone with health concerns in your family? And so you guys have been quarantining really strictly, and maybe that's really taking a toll. I have a client who both she and her husband got COVID, and her level of anxiety has really just been through the roof with her two children. And she sort of it's been months since they had COVID. They live in New York City and were part of the very early first round of illnesses. So she and her husband were both very, very sick. And, her 20-year-old daughter took care of her 6-year-old son. And so they were able to make it through. But she lives with a level of anxiety and PTSD that she's just never experienced before. And so some of the things that might be happening to you are that you're thinking about the what ifs, right? There's this sort of never-ending string of dominoes sort of rolling out into the future about what we're all afraid of. We've all got worst case scenarios in our heads. We've probably all talked to our families about contingency plans, right? If somebody gets COVID, which room of the house are they going to stay in? And many of us are also wondering what catastrophe is coming next. I know I feel that. Like if I had to think twice the other night before checking the news before bed, because I was like, if something really big and bad has happened, I'm not sure I want to know about it just before bedtime, you know? And there are some strategies for coping with the worst case scenario dominoes that might be going on through your head. And one of those is focusing on what's within your control and what's not within your control. Because let me tell you, that is maybe the best Venn diagram you can make in your mind. Draw two circles and have them interlock. And one of those circles is things that are not in your control, and one of those circles is things that are in your control. And the thing in the middle, right, is sort of what overlaps. And thinking about what you can control is really just yourself, right? You can't control anybody in your family. You can't control anyone at your job. You can't control how your neighbors protect against COVID or not. You can't control anybody who's, not wearing a mask properly. You can't do any of that. But what you can do is choose how you care for yourself and how you care for those around you. So overcoming anxiety, I don't know that I think about it as overcoming anxiety, more just about managing anxiety. It's really just more about managing anxiety. So what we want to do is minimize exposure to the news. I think everybody I talk to at one point or another has had to modulate their connectivity to the news. And of course, you want to practice social distancing when out in public. And of course, you want to follow all of your local guidelines regarding masks and regarding safety protocols. And you want to take active measures to manage your stress. If it doesn't feel safe to do something, then don't do it. I've talked to plenty of people who have had to turn down invitations to a wedding or turn down invitations to a birthday party because it just didn't feel safe to them. Too many people who might not be following safety protocols properly, and setting those boundaries is completely fine. And nobody said it would be easy to set those boundaries, but it is okay to do it. I'm already talking to people, I'm recording this in the beginning of October, and I'm talking to people who are planning how they're going to spend their holidays and what they can and can't do and what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe. And this year will probably involve more boundary setting than you've ever had to do before, potentially. So, reach out to people, talk to them, think about, I talked to a woman recently whose brother died, not of COVID, but of something else. About a year ago, and the anniversary of his death is coming up, and they want to put up his headstone and kind of have a little family ceremony, but it doesn't feel safe to do that because her parents are in their 90s and her brother and sister don't follow safety protocols very well. They don't wear masks, and so to her it doesn't feel safe to go, and she's feeling tortured about it. She was her brother's caretaker and the closest person to her brother, and now doesn't even feel like she can be at his gravesite at the unveiling of his headstone. But this is what she's going to do. She's not going to go because it doesn't feel safe to her, and she knows that above all else, that is what the most important thing is. All the complicated interwoven family dynamics doesn't mean that it's safe. So more than anything, focus on what you need for yourself, right? When stress becomes chronic, it turns into distress. It creates a hostile environment in your body. This is the difference between chronic stress and acute stress, right? Acute stress is, the power goes out and you have to sort of manage and negotiate that or something like that. But chronic stress is day after day, week after week, month after month, feeling like you don't know when the end is going to come, and you don't know when things are going to go back to normal, and you don't know how to take care of yourself. I talk to people every day who feel like they're trying to take care of themselves, but the stuff that they're doing just isn't enough. And not only is it not enough, it doesn't get them where it used to get them. They feel as though, they're exercising or they're trying to stay connected to their family and friends, and they're trying to eat well, and yet it doesn't take them as far as it used to. So it's really important to define stress, because when we are feeling this kind of chronic overwhelm and chronic stress, our bodies want different things and our minds want different things. And so normal psychological and physical reactions will be there for sure. But stress, the thing I love about stress is that it's a socially acceptable word, right? You could, get on the phone or a Zoom call with a colleague and they could be like, how are you doing? And you could be like, oh, I'm so stressed. But the important thing for you is to actually make sure that you look under the umbrella and define for yourself what that stress is. Is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is it overwhelm? Is it anger? Is it loneliness? Is it fear? Like, what is actually under that umbrella of stress? Because most people I talk to these days are feeling overloaded and they're feeling overwhelmed. And the body's natural defense against danger is that you get a whole bunch of hormones, right? The cortisol rises, and that's where you get the fight or flight response. But we can sort of be in a chronically heightened state and feel like we're never really switched off, right? That's hypervigilance. That's sort of being alert all the time, like waiting for someone to pounce on you. Stress can be mild to extreme depending on the person or the situation, and it is definitely cumulative. The more stress we experience, the more stress we tend to feel. And one of the things that you want to think about is if you are feeling really overwhelmed, you have to think about what you might be willing to do to combat it, right? Because there are so many different physical signs. And if we were all in a room together, I'd have you guys raise your hand and see which of these you really identified with: the clenching or the grinding of teeth, the headaches, the gastrointestinal difficulties, difficulty focusing or concentrating, low energy, exhaustion. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many people I talk to who are just so fatigued and so exhausted because they're not sleeping well, they're not eating well, they're drinking too much, and they're just sort of on this merry-go-round of misery that just feels completely overwhelming. So how are we going to manage the stress? First, you have to pay attention and recognize that you're stressed, right? The first thing, like, oh God, I think I really am stressed. Second, you have to think about what is within your control and what is not within your control, right? Why am I feeling so stressed? And is it something that I can control? And then what you're willing to do to alleviate your stress. And willingness is different than ability, right? It is different, right? I might have the willingness to get up at I might have the ability to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go for a 15-mile bike ride. But ladies and gentlemen, I have no willingness to do that because I don't like that kind of exercise, right? That's never been what I like to do. So I have ability, but no willingness, right? What I do have willingness to do is do yoga or go for a run or do something different. But you have to gauge for yourself, what am I willing to do right now? And the answer might be not much. And that's okay, but it is taking a little personal inventory. And, the tips for managing the anxiety and the overwhelm that come with that kind of chronic stress or that kind of sense of feeling overwhelmed is that you want to look for positive thinking. You want to look for challenges as opportunities, and you want to focus on what is within your control. So we're going to talk about some deep breathing and mindfulness activities coming up in just a little bit. But it's important to remember that things outside of your control, other people, right? For years, I worked in the world of substance abuse and addiction. And there's a saying in the 12 steps, which I love, is that you can't control people, places, or things. Other people are outside of your control: your spouse, your kids, your boss, your neighbors, strangers, other people's problems, other people's behavior. Many challenges are completely out of your control. The weather, schools closing, stores closing, financial markets, workplace rules and protocols, right? All these things completely out of your control. You know what is within your control is your own work ethic, the effort that you put into things, your honesty, your integrity, your tone of voice, how you talk to people, the way that you choose to talk to people, implementing stress and self-care techniques. I talk to so many people and they all wish they were exercising more. Everybody I talk to wants to be exercising more. So what's stopping them, right? It can actually be incredibly hard to find a good self-care routine, but how can we help encourage you to do that? Some people get so black and white and perfectionistic about it, like, oh, I'm either exercising or I'm not. It's either on or it's off, right? It's black or it's white. That's not really reality, right? Some days we feel like it and some days we don't, and sort of getting into a regular rhythm where maybe you're exercising 4 days a week, 3 days a week. That's a rhythm to me, right? That counts. That's good. And it is within your control. I call these three things the holy trinity of self-care. They're what I consider the basics. These pillars of life are often where our stress shows up, right? Eating too much, not sleeping enough, not exercising. And these three things are also your first line of defense. These are the things to focus on when every single thing in your life feels out of control, right? When you can't control anything, this is what you can focus on. You do have control over what time you go to sleep at night. And you do have control over how much exercise that you get and the kind of food that you put in your mouth. It can feel really hard. Some days you might not have much control, but these are the things to focus on. Self-care strategies, acknowledging your situation, getting some reality testing about this, keeping things in perspective, setting realistic expectations, focusing on those three basic pillars of health, using stress management techniques like deep breathing or progressive relaxation, guided imagery, gratitude. These are all really important things to focus on, especially the gratitude piece. I remember when gratitude journals, right, started becoming popular and kind of a lot of years ago now, but I remember wanting to try it with a colleague just to see what would happen, right? Like what was the actual benefit of doing something like that? And so I remember we took on like a 30-day challenge of texting gratitude lists back and forth to one another. And the thing that I found, which is wonderful, is that gratitude is actually more like a muscle than anything else. But the more that you look for opportunities to be grateful, the more opportunities you will find, because you train your mind to look that way and look in that direction. Right? Gratitude is not going to just come and anoint you sitting on your sofa feeling sorry for yourself. Gratitude is something that you can go out and find and work hard to cultivate, because there's a famous British psychoanalytic theorist named Melanie Klein who wrote a book about envy. And what she found, right, in her own theory was that gratitude was the antidote to something like envy. And I love that it's an antidote because it sort of acknowledges the venomous quality of how poisonous something like, envy can be. And so the same is true all the way around. The fear that we are feeling these days, the overwhelm, the frustrations, the toxicity of sort of being trapped in one place can feel venomous, right? It can feel really toxic. And the antidote is focusing on something like gratitude and focusing on that holy trinity of self-care. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first. I talked to a woman the other day who was sort of trying to convince me that her job was so busy and that she had so many responsibilities and there was no possible way she could, ever be able to focus on the stuff that we were trying to encourage her to focus on, like exercise and sleeping more. And it's okay with me if somebody says that they don't have willingness. It's not okay with me if someone insists that they can't do it, right? That they're just too busy. And so those are two really different things. If you don't have willingness, if you think it's too hard, that's one thing. But telling me that the external pressures are just too much and you're not able to set any boundaries with anybody in your job to allow for more space and time for you to take care of yourself, that I'm not buying. So I love the idea of making daily deposits. I love the idea of well-being and self-care being a bank, and you have to make deposits or you will go broke. Right? If you don't get enough sleep, we've all been sleep deprived at one point or another. Most people have had insomnia at one point or another. Understanding just how powerful it can be to have no sleep and feeling really overwhelmed and feeling physical, that the physicalness of your body's needs is a really, really important thing. Mindfulness, stress management, primary and secondary foods, meaning the things that are actually good for your body and the things that are not good for your body, differentiating between those two, and making daily deposits in each of these accounts so that you are maintaining your well-being. You have to put on your own oxygen mask. They even tell you that on an airplane, that you can't help an infant until you yourself are able to breathe. Ways to build resilience. All of this stuff, any ways that you practice self-care and stress management will help you towards building resiliency. And these are other ways, right? Make and strengthening connections. The more connected we feel, the better we do. And looking for opportunities, right? Basically turning challenges into opportunities. And this third one there, setting firm boundaries. The healthiest people I know are the ones with the best boundaries. That's how it works. The healthiest people I know are the ones with the best boundaries, the ones who are able to say no, the ones who are able to set limits. I work with a large multinational international bank as an in-house therapist, and the medical director of the bank has been there for years and years and years, and is as busy as she has ever been in her entire life. She says it's busier than when she was a resident, because managing all the different offices, all the different everything that have to do with the medical crisis in the world. You know, she can be on calls from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and yet she sets boundaries. She does yoga every day. She goes for a walk every day because she carves out the time. And she'll bring her cell phone with her. If people need her, they call her, but she marks out the time on her calendar because she has to for her own well-being. In order to be able to function, she's got to be able to do stuff for herself in order to be of service to other people. That is setting boundaries, right? And proactively managing the stress. And if you know that you're not good at managing stress, or you know that it's hard for you to eat well or sleep well or exercise well, this is also where people are throwing money at the problem to support themselves. They're able to hire a trainer, sign up for, you know, a Zoom class where you're able to sort of, I mean, like I do yoga, right? I run and I do yoga and I do all kinds of things. But the yoga that I sign up for is where I'm on Zoom too, that they can see me, right? Because otherwise, if it were just me, like doing a video from online that I was playing, I wouldn't do it, right? If it was just me accountable to me, no way. But if I pay for the class and I'm on Zoom and the teacher can see me, yeah, that I'll do for sure, because that's accountability. So the list in front of us are approved, right? They're approved by the Harvard Medical School. They sound very official and they can help reduce stress and promote relaxation. Taking deep breaths, right? If you take long, deep breaths going in and out of your nose, if your exhale is longer than your inhale, it signals to your body and your sympathetic nervous system that you are not in distress. That's what it does. You're calming your central nervous system down. That's what breathing does. It helps us calm down. And when our breathing becomes short and shallow and fast, that's a sign to your body that all is not well. And so focusing on breathing slowly and deliberately and with purpose, taking your inhale and then making your exhale be longer, that's a sign that you're telling your body that all is well. And it doesn't have to be like inhale to a count of 12. It can be inhale to a count of 4 and exhale to a count of 6. That's the kind of balance that we're talking about. Let your exhale be longer and you will calm down your nervous system. Doing body scans to relax your muscle groups. Most of us are either clenching our abdomen or clenching our jaw at, most times during the day. Guided imagery, seeing places in your mind that will help you disengage from stress and overwhelm. Doing a mindfulness meditation where you sit comfortably and focus on breathing and bring your attention to the present moment without letting your mind get on roller skates and go to the past or the future. The reason mindfulness is helpful is because all the things you're worried about and all the things you're, frightened of or angry about, they're not happening right now in this moment. They've either already happened or they haven't happened yet. It's like my favorite quote from Mark Twain, which is, "I've had a lot of trouble in my life and most of it never happened." So coming into the present moment and doing a mindfulness breathing exercise and just bringing your attention to your body is a great way to get out of the past and stay away from the future. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, repetitive prayer, mantra, these are all ways to focus the mind, right? The mind is like a wild animal, just like a monkey swinging from branch to branch, going from thought to thought. I mean, you probably have 16 different things, right? You're probably multitasking while you listen to this, or you're scrolling through some social media feed, or you're, or you're driving, or you're walking, or you're doing a whole bunch of other things. And that's perfectly fine, right? But the mind, focusing it, that's what prayer is. That's what mantra is. It's focusing your mind so that you can have some tiny bit of control over it. Helping loved ones cope. So we, as we mentioned earlier, don't have any control over the loved ones in our lives, but we do, of course, want to help the people that we love. You can, of course, model good coping skills yourself. You can maintain your own normal schedules within your routine. You can encourage positive activities. The whole house, if you have someone in your household who is depressed, who is unemployed, who is drinking too much, right? You don't have to let the entire family, sort of collapse under the weight of that one person's dysfunction. It can be incredibly hard, and you might need professional support to rebalance the household or rebalance yourself or rebalance your kids. But help is possible, and it is possible, to find your own serenity in the middle of someone else's chaos. There are so many different resources for children, for yourself, for the people in your family. Just find some of those resources. And if you're not sure, you can reach out to your employee assistance program for help. For you and your family members, here are the toll-free numbers for you. And the employee assistance program is for you, and it is also for the members of your household. So I really, really encourage you to take action for yourself, to take action for those around you, to find some willingness and figure out what you think the next right step is for you and what you think the next right step is for those around you. And if you're able to, find some willingness for yourself, it would be wonderful, right? This is the contact information, and I hope you'll reach out and find out what the benefits are.